a live TV show, a worn dog tag, and a quiet moment that made everyone stop and listen. It didn't begin with music or people clapping. It began with silence. Not a calm silence, but the kind that feels heavy, like something important is about to happen. The stage on The View was bright with lights, but the lights didn't shine in the eyes of the man sitting quietly. It was Sylvester Stallone. He sat very still. You could see a small metal tag, called a dog tag, under the collar of his black jacket. He looked older than in the movies. Rougher, but also more real. His fists rested on his legs like they were carved out of stone. Across from him sat Whoopi Goldberg. She smiled, but it looked a little nervous. She made a joke about his dog tag. "So, you still wear that little metal tag around your neck?" she asked, smiling. "Thought Rambo left that stuff behind years ago." Some people laughed a little. Not loud. Just enough to see if it was okay to laugh. Stallone didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He slowly reached up and pulled out the dog tag from under his collar. It caught the light and sparkled a little. "That little piece of metal belonged to my brother," he said in a quiet, rough voice. "He died in a place most people can't even say. He wore this when he prayed his last words." Now the whole room got quiet. Really quiet. Even the lights seemed too bright. Whoopi blinked. The other hosts moved in their seats. A camera person messed up the shot for a second. Even backstage, someone whispered, "Cut to commercial." But the director held up a hand. "Not yet. Not now." Stallone rolled the tag between his fingers. "I don't wear this to look cool," he said. "I wear it because some things should never be forgotten, even when they hurt." No one moved. Someone coughed way in the back. Then Whoopi tried to lighten the mood. "Well, that got heavy quick," she said with a nervous chuckle. But it didn't change the feeling in the room. Everything feels different now. Stallone didn't come to joke. He didn't come to fight. He came to share something deep and real, truth. And he did, like a strong punch to the heart. 2 days earlier, he got an email. The title said, "The View invites Mr. Stallone for a conversation on legacy and American values." It sounded okay. But Tony, his publicist, looked at the email like it was a trap. "They're not inviting you to talk," Tony said. "They're trying to poke the bear." Stallone stood by the window of his small office downtown. A faded Rocky II poster hung behind him. He didn't say anything. Just watched the city outside in the soft afternoon light. "They want the old Stallone," Tony said. "The punchline. The has-been. They think if they make you mad, you'll say something wild. And then it'll go viral." Stallone turned slowly. He smiled a little, like it hurt. "Then maybe I'll show them something they didn't expect," he said. He reached down for an old canvas bag. Inside was a small worn case. He opened it. There were 2 old boxing gloves inside. The leather was cracked. The knuckles were rough. They were stained from time and use. "These," he said, holding one softly, "are the gloves I wore the week my brother Frankie died." Tony went quiet. "People think pain makes me weak," Stallone said. "It doesn't. It makes me honest." He put one glove back in the bag, but he left the other out. His hand rested on it gently. "I'm not going to that studio to fight," he said. "But I'm not going in empty-handed either." The moment that stunned the crowd. Tony sat down. His shoulders were low. "If you're going to do this, do it your way." Stallone nodded. Not angry. Just calm and strong. The kind of calm that comes from being doubted for a long time. By the next morning, people were talking online. "Why is Stallone going on The View? He's too old. Is this damage control? He's not famous anymore." He didn't read any of it. He sat quietly in the back of a black car on the way to the studio. One glove in his bag. Dog tag tucked under his shirt. He looked out the window at a city that once loved him, then forgot him, and maybe remembered him again. He didn't practice lines. He wasn't going to win. He was going to speak the truth. And truth doesn't always yell. Sometimes it just shows up quiet, hurt, and strong. In the studio, the red light turned on, live. The stage looked like every other talk show. Bright, happy, a place meant to hide sad stories. The co-hosts smiled wide. They were ready for a fun chat. But Stallone didn't smile. He sat still, his back straight, like a rock. His dog tag just barely showed under his collar. A veteran in the crowd speaks up. He didn't look at the cameras. He wasn't there to act. Whoopi leaned in with a grin. "So, Sylvester," she began playfully, "you've played soldiers, boxers, gangsters. Even a guy who fought in the jungle with a headband and no shirt." The audience laughed. It was timed, planned. "But tell me," she asked, "when did you decide to become a priest with a dog tag?" This laugh was louder. But Stallone didn't laugh. He let the quiet speak first. Then in a deep voice he said, "Some people wear things to get attention. I will wear mine to remember." Some people in the crowd went quiet. The fun rhythm of the show was off now. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. "You're saying the guy who blew up tanks with a bow and arrow is here to talk about memory?" She leaned back like she had made a clever point. Another laugh rolled through the room. Stallone moved just a little. Not angry, just strong. "I've played many roles," he said. "But pain doesn't need a script." The laughter stopped. "You all know the line," he said. "It's not about how hard you hit." Some people mouthed the words with him. "It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." He let that hang in the air. "That wasn't written for a trailer," he said. "I wrote that when my life was falling apart, when my brother died, when the world got quiet, and no one clapped." Whoopi's smile didn't feel real anymore. "I'm not here to be a priest," he said. "I'm here because sometimes pain needs a voice that doesn't shake." The crowd didn't laugh. They didn't clap. They just listened. In the back row, a young man lowered his phone. A woman in the second row put her hand to her mouth. A powerful message for someone watching. The air felt different. The lights were too hot. The stage felt fake now. Whoopi cleared her throat. "Well, that got real fast." Stallone nodded. "Pain doesn't wait for the right time." And just like that, the first part of the show ended. Not with cheers. Not with jokes, but with silence. A silence that meant something true had just been shared. For a moment, no one said anything. Not the hosts. Not the crowd. Not even Whoopi. Her note cards felt too small now. Like the script didn't match what was really happening. Stallone leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. The lights showed the deep lines on his face. Not from age, but from life. "I want to show you something," he said. His voice was calm, like someone opening a memory they don't open often. From beside his chair, he picked up an old canvas bag. The kind you don't buy in stores. The kind you keep forever. The audience leaned in. The camera zoomed in just a little. He opened the bag. Inside were 2 old boxing gloves. They looked like they had been through a lot. The laces were torn. The knuckles were smooth from being used again and again. Time had left marks all over them. "These," he said, holding one gently in his hand, "aren't from a movie set." A studio changed by truth. He stopped talking for a moment. It was quiet. "I wore these the week Frankie died," he said. Everyone in the room held their breath. Not a big gasp, just that quiet breath people take when something feels really important. "My brother was far away, in another country," Stallone said. His voice got a little softer. He almost cried, but he didn't. He believed in helping others. He believed in doing the right thing, even when it's hard. His jaw moved a little, like he was holding back feelings. "When I heard he was gone, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't say anything," Stallone said. "I just put these on." He picked up the gloves. "And I went to the gym. I hit the punching bag again and again, until my hands were hurt and bleeding." He looked down at the gloves. It was like they remembered everything. Not to feel sad forever, but to keep the memory alive. "Every time I hit the bag, it was like a little prayer," he said. A prayer he didn't know how to say with words. The studio was very quiet. Nobody was laughing. No one made jokes. It was just one man showing his real feelings, making his pain into something that could help others. I kept them, Stallone said, looking at the gloves. Because real pain doesn't always come with sad music. It doesn't always look big and dramatic. Sometimes it just stays with you, hiding in a bag, waiting. Whoopi moved in her seat. Her lips were tight. Her show wasn't hers anymore. Not because someone took it from her, but because someone had earned it. Stallone gently placed the gloves on the table between them. Not like a toy. Not like a movie prop. But like a memory that could be seen. I don't wear the dog tag to look cool, he said. I don't carry these gloves to remember the past like a picture. I carry them because what we live through, what we survive, shouldn't be hidden. Nobody moved. Nobody talked. For the first time on TV in a long time, sadness wasn't something to ignore. It was something to see. The gloves sat on the table, like treasures. Not from fighting, but from surviving. Some camera people moved their cameras, trying to show the gloves close up. Their cracked leather looked old, like the truth that I had been through a lot. The people watching weren't just sitting anymore. They were leaning forward, paying attention. Nobody was looking at their phones. Nobody was talking. Only quiet. Whoopi made a sound in her throat. It felt too loud in the silence. Well, she said, trying to find her voice. That's not what I thought Rambo would say. Some people gave little laughs. Nervous ones. Not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do. Stallone didn't laugh. He didn't even look at her. He was looking at the people in the room. He wasn't looking for claps. He was looking for a connection. Then, from the far side of the room, a man stood up. He was older, maybe 60s. Wearing a denim jacket, his hands were rough like he worked hard. The studio team froze. No one had planned for this. The man's voice shook as he talked. He's not just an actor, he said. Everyone looked his way. Someone in charge said, cut. But another person whispered, let it keep going. The man walked into the aisle. His hands were shaking. I trained in a gym in Philly back in 1979, before Rocky II, he said. They brought us in to help with boxing scenes. I didn't know who he was. Just a guy with a busted lip and a big heart. It was quiet. Everyone was listening. That man, he said, pointing at Stallone. I didn't ask to be famous. He worked harder than everyone. He got hurt with us. He stayed after to talk to the kids who didn't have dads. He didn't see us as extras. He saw us as people. The room started to feel different, like people were finally seeing something important. I lost my son in Iraq, the man added, his voice cracking again. But seeing someone carry sadness without asking for pity, that matters. Stallone didn't speak. He just nodded. His eyes looked down, heavy with respect. The man slowly sat back down. His chair made a noise, like the whole room finally let out a long breath. Whoopi's cards were shaking in her hands. Everything had changed. People weren't just watching an interview anymore. They were part of something big. A woman whispered, "This feels different." A man in the back who had his arms crossed before, now had his hands open, resting on his lap. He didn't even notice he did it. He was listening. Stallone finally spoke. "I never wanted to be a role model," he said. "I just wanted to make something real." He looked around the room. The light on his face felt warmer. But honesty, it hits harder than any punch I ever threw. Nobody clapped. They just stayed quiet. Because they didn't hear a fancy line. They heard something real. And just like that, things changed. People weren't just watching him. They were with him. The studio didn't feel like a show anymore. It felt like a place full of something deep. Not just sadness, not just pain, but truth. Real and raw. Stallone sat still. His dog tag rested on his chest. The gloves sitting next to him. He didn't touch them again. Then someone else spoke from the middle of the room. A voice broke the silence. "I used to believe." It wasn't someone being rude. It was a confession. Everyone turned. Even Stallone looked up. Not scared, but listening. A young man, maybe 20, stood up. He wore a hoodie. His fingers were playing with the bottom of it. He looked nervous, but brave. "I used to believe in God," the young man said. I used to think my mom's talks about faith and purpose meant something." The co-hosts looked at each other, unsure. The people backstage didn't go to a commercial. They couldn't. The moment was alive. "But then my brother died," the young man said. He blinked fast. "It felt like the world was just a big joke. Like everything I believed was fake." He looked straight at Stallone. "And then you talked about the gloves. About hurting. About not pretending." He stopped, then said, "I don't know if I believe it again. But right now, I kind of want to try." It wasn't loud. It wasn't like a big movie ending. It was something real. And in today's world, being real is brave. Stallone didn't smile. He didn't make it a big show. He stood up. For the first time, he walked off the stage toward the people. He wasn't acting. He was just being a man who understood. He stopped 2 rows away. There was no music, no bright light, just him. "Then you've already started," Stallone said softly. The young man almost fell, but he stayed standing. Stallone turned to everyone else. "I didn't come here to change anyone," he said. "I came because sometimes someone out there needs to hear a voice that sounds like survival." The young man sat down. His hands were shaking. People around him didn't hug him. They didn't try to fix him. They just reached out because they understood. Whoopi didn't say anything right away. She stared. Something in her eyes had changed. Maybe it was a doubt. Maybe it was understanding. Stallone sat back down. The gloves were still on the table. But now, they weren't just things from the past. They were something strong. And in that room, faith, not church faith, but hope, started to breathe again. Not loud. Not perfect. But enough. The quiet stayed. Not awkward but important. Stallone was sitting. But inside, everyone was still standing in that space. Between pain and truth. That kind of space TV usually hides. Whoopi flipped her cards twice. She looked up. Her voice was tight. "So what now?" she asked. Her voice had a bit of a sharp edge. "You bring gloves, dog tags, sad stories, and now you're some kind of guide?" Her tone was half a joke, half a challenge. Stallone looked at her. Not mad, not sorry, just calm. "I didn't bring stories," he said. "I brought what's real." The air in the room tightened. Whoopi leaned in more, pushing now. "Come on, Sly," she said. "You made millions playing hurt guys. You won awards for boxing movies. And now you want people to believe you're just a guy who knows pain." She shook her head. "Sounds more like you're just holding on to it." The people in the room felt the words hit. It was too much, too sharp, and too late to take back. Stallone didn't say anything at first. He stayed quiet and let the words sit there, like dust in the air after a roof falls down. Then he spoke softly. "Sad feelings don't go away just because the cameras stop." Some people in the audience nodded. Someone sitting far back whispered, "That's true. I'm not holding on to sadness just to feel bad," Stallone said quietly. "I carry it because pretending nothing happened would be the real act." Everyone felt those words. It was quiet. Whoopi opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. Things were changing, and she could feel it. The talk show wasn't going as planned. The papers in her hand didn't match what was happening on stage. "This was supposed to be fun," she said, almost like she was talking to herself. Stallone heard her. "Fun doesn't mean fake," he replied. "And sometimes, truth doesn't shine on a stage. Sometimes, it sneaks in through the cracks." For a moment, everyone just listened. The room was so quiet, you could hear the soft hum of the lights and people leaning forward. One of the co-hosts, who hadn't said anything before, whispered, "He's not wrong." Whoopi looked at her, then back at Stallone. Her smile was gone. What was left was something softer, not giving up, but opening up. Stallone leaned in a little. "I didn't come here to argue," he said. "But that doesn't mean I came here to be quiet either." And this time, nobody saw him as a movie fighter like Rambo. Nobody thought the gloves were just props. Nobody thought his pain was fake. For the first time, the famous talk show host looked like a guest. And the guest looked like a mirror, showing them something deep inside. No one moved. No one spoke. Stallone's words stayed in the air. Not loud, but heavy. Whoopi sat still. Her normal way of talking fast was gone. Her note cards sat in her lap like broken shields. And then, something happened. A soft beep. A flash. The screen behind them, usually showing pictures or logos, suddenly showed big white words on a black background. A mistake by someone backstage had played the wrong screen. But it was too late. The message said, "I'm a Marine. I lost my best friend in Afghanistan. I was going to end my life tonight. But watching Stallone talk about pain like it's not weakness. Maybe I'll wait one more day." Everyone gasped at once. The whole room held its breath. One big pause. Stallone turned to the screen slowly. He didn't blink. He didn't act. He felt it. You could see it. Not in his eyes, but in how still he became, like he had a new purpose. The co-hosts were shocked. Whoopi looked at the screen, her mouth open a little. Her usual smart and smooth voice was now shaky and real. She started, then stopped. Stallone stood up. He didn't look at the camera. He looked into it, like he was talking to someone far away, someone in a quiet room making a hard choice. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice strong but gentle, "I don't know your name. I don't know what you've been through." He glanced at the gloves on the table. "But I know what it's like when the pain feels like it takes over the whole room." No one made a sound. Even the camera people had stopped moving. "You don't have to believe in me," he said. "But believe this. You're still breathing. And that matters." He stepped forward, like he was trying to reach the person. "Don't leave this world just yet," he said. "Not until you fight back at least once." Quiet again. But now, the quiet wasn't scary. It was special. Whoopi blinked. She picked up her glass of water but didn't drink it. She just held it, like it was keeping her steady. In the control room, the people behind the scenes didn't cut to a commercial. It didn't feel like a show anymore. It felt like a church. Or maybe a battle. Or maybe both. The screen faded slowly. No music. No clapping. Just a picture of a man who wasn't acting. And a message no one expected, but one someone really needed. The talk show had stopped being just a show. It had become something that might save a life. The screen went black. The message was gone. But the silence stayed. It was deep. Holy. Electric. Stallone didn't sit back down. He just stood there, one hand on the gloves, the other touching the dog tag around his neck. It had been there ever since his brother died in the war. Nobody clapped. Nobody said, "Wow." And that said everything. Then, slowly, one person stood up. A woman in the front row, hugging herself like she was holding something very delicate. Then a man in the third row stood too. He had crossed his arms earlier, but now they were at his sides. He stood without saying a word. Then more people stood, row by row, quietly. Not planned, not loud, just real. No one clapped. Not because they weren't moved, but because they were. And clapping would have broken something special. Stallone stood still, looking at them. Not like a hero, but like a man seeing something important. People weren't cheering for him. They were reacting to something bigger. Truth without pretending. Pain without acting. Strength without shouting. Whoopi was still sitting. Her back is a little bent now. Her note cards were loose in her hands. She stared at Stallone. There was no anger in her eyes anymore. Now there was something else. Thinking. Maybe being sorry. Understanding. She finally said something. "You didn't come here to win, did you?" Stallone shook his head. "No," he said. "I came because someone might be watching who needs to know they're not crazy for still hurting." A quiet moment. Then Whoopi stood too. Not to be in charge. Not to show off. She just couldn't stay sitting anymore. The silence wasn't weird. It was holy. Like the kind you hear at a funeral. Or when someone finally understands something big. Stallone took a deep breath and sat down again. Not because it was over, but because it had become part of them all. The gloves were still there. But now, they weren't just movie props. They were proof. Some hurts don't go away by being ignored. They heal when someone sees them. And for once, the show didn't have anything to sell. No jokes, no fights, no tricks. Just people standing up for a man who reminded them it's okay to feel. The lights were still on, but nobody cared. Not the audience, not the camera crew, not even Whoopi, who stood still like someone waking from a long dream. Stallone sat quietly, calm but strong. The gloves sat between them like quiet statues. Backstage, the crew whispered about going to commercials. But no one touched the button. Because something special had happened. Not something to go viral. Something real. Stallone looked at Whoopi. Not like he won. But with kindness. Gentleness. She looked down at her note cards. They were useless now. Like reading lines after something huge had changed. "I didn't mean to laugh at you," she said softly. "Sometimes we talk so much, we forget how to listen." Stallone nodded. "We all do." He paused. No one tried to fill the silence. "You know what I learned," he said. "People aren't scared of feeling sad." He touched the dog tag again, like it was something holy. They're scared of being the only one who feels that way. He looked at the glove. "I carried my brother's tag for years," he said. "I thought it made me strong. But it wasn't the tag that helped me." He picked up one glove. It was remembering that the fight doesn't end just because I got tired. He handed the glove to Whoopi. She looked at it, unsure. Like he had given her a story she wasn't ready to hold. "You don't have to believe what I believe," he said kindly. "Just don't laugh at what helps some of us stay alive." Off camera, someone wiped tears from their face. Someone else up in the lights whispered, "That's the truest thing I've ever seen." Stallone slowly stood. He looked at the audience, still standing, still quiet, and gave a tiny nod. Not for show, but out of respect. He turned to Whoopi one last time. "I didn't come here to be understood," he said. "I came to remind people it's okay to feel." He didn't shake hands. He didn't wave. He just walked out, through the lights, through what used to be just a stage. Now it was something more. And when he got to the edge, he stopped. He didn't turn around. He just said, loud enough for the room to hear, "Sometimes, you don't need to win the fight. You just need to stay standing." The screen faded. No music. No clapping. Just the picture of the gloves sitting on the table. And a message that would spread all over the internet before the day ended. Strength isn't loud. It stays strong. If you like this story, tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fun adventures and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.